All right. Hey, everyone. I'm super excited to bring you episode 117 with Melanie McCool. And she is the entrepreneur's hypnotherapist who runs a thriving group, Accelerate Entrepreneur Growth Without Burnout. With more than 20 years of experience as an entrepreneur, she combines the neuroscience of success, money mindset, sales confidence training, hypnosis, and NLP to quickly remove subconscious blocks and end the cycle of procrastination and self-sabotage. Her mission? To facilitate your breakthrough so you can reach your highest potential. And I'm super excited to bring you guys Melanie because we actually connected through Facebook and I just heard her voice and it was like so soothing and so relaxing. And she went through something, I would say, I kind of had the opportunity to accelerate by having thyroid cancer at age 14. And she went maybe through it in a little bit of a different space and time, but it really was what guided me to put my health at the forefront of what I wanted to do with my career. So that way I could be well and be happy and be successful. So I'm super excited to have you and just thank you for being here.
And it's so perfect and such an important topic. And I can't imagine having gone through it at 14, but I have to say that you have a gift, for understanding that we can build a business in a way that it actually blesses our lives versus it being our lives, right? So like we've got rules around our business, both you and I now, don't we? Really?
Yeah. And in our career, it's very different. And so I'm super excited because I just kind of want to start out first. And that when we talked, I think it'd be good for us to kind of start here is tell me about your career and what initially inspired you into your initial career before the burnout of your adrenals and thyroid. So I want to just get that so that way people can really set the stage of maybe why they're doing something where they are subconsciously beginning to already realize something's not quite right.
Sure. So I say I had no business being in business when I started more than 21 years ago, because all I knew is that I was determined to be a mom, a work at home mom, because it's not something that I had in my life was literally parents. Okay. So I just knew that. And I had as an ecological consultant, this is really not at all prepared for it, but I dove straight in and I figured I was looking at all these people on the internet, their smiling faces. They look like they have this beautiful lifestyle. I was like, oh, well, they just know something I don't know yet. So I'm diving in. And so I did. Yeah. And I did online sales and marketing. I did different affiliate things. I sold clothing and travel. I sold all kinds of things. And I essentially just went down the trail of developing mastery in sales and marketing, especially in the online space, because I still had little people, all around. And it wasn't until about 2009 that I went out into what I call in real life, the real world, to start doing business like that. So at that point, I got a whole nother skill set, but I was teaching how to, wrap your offline arms, your your online arms around the people that you meet in real life so that they can stay connected. So I was teaching and training, and I actually really loved it because essentially I became a top 1% earner. And I was a teacher, trainer, speaker, leader, a leader of leaders, something that I dove into leadership. And I really felt like the work that I was doing even then was around my passion, which is about helping adults to break free of the chains of the past and to go with their full heart in the pursuit of their dream life.
Sorry.
Yeah, bless you. And so I didn't, but all this time, I didn't realize what was going on in the background of my psyche. And because at the point where I was earning the most, I was working the hardest, which is actually what we don't need to do. But I didn't know that way that works, is that there's literally a part of my mind that said it takes hard work to make money. And if you aren't a good, hardworking person, then you must be earning money unscrupulously. So do you see what I'm saying? So there was these things going on.
No,
So
it's huge.
Yeah. I was overworking when I didn't need to. And that was really like the beginning of the downward spiral. It's like when I was making the most money, I was the most miserable, which made no sense.
Yeah.
And I'm not a person who chases money.
Yeah.
I love it. We love it. But so it wasn't miserable because I didn't have enough. I had more than enough, but I was miserable. And yeah, that was the beginning of the burnout. I probably burned out 4 times in the traditional sense before my physical health took a total dump and took me out of my career.
I want to say too, because one of the biggest beliefs, which I had to really work on, and for those of you listening, I've never shared this before, but that was, I grew up with like, you have to work hard. And I always knew in a way, just because of cancer, that I wanted to have my own financial stability, because I saw a dad yell at a mom saying that the only reason we can't pay for our child's treatment is because you're a stay-at-home mom. And so to me, even though it wasn't my parents, this like instilled in me at whatever cost, I will always have financial security or more than enough, because that was just so traumatizing to experience, basically. And so I know what you're saying, because I had to sit there. I mean, journal after journal after journal, like saying like, I dissolved the need to work hard, and that working hard equals money, because like if everyone who worked really hard, like, which is hourly workers, if whoever worked the most, if it made the most money, then every hourly worker would be a multi-billionaire, and all the billionaires would not be, billionaires. So it's not that they don't work. It's that you have teams and you leverage differently and you strategize and you play at a different game.
Yes.
But I think it's so important you shared that. And then I want to kind of go into, what were the signs kind of burnout? Like, what were the signs of like examples of miserability? And then when was the actual like flat line of like my adrenals and my thyroid, like something has to change?
So I was doing my thing. I was literally, speaking on stages and in front of rooms, teaching people how to market like champ. And I started to get anxiety, and I was like, I don't get anxiety. So that was actually the first beginning stages. So I would have these tinctures and stuff to like calm my heartbeat. I'm like, I did not know what was going on. So that was like my first sign, is I literally had anxiety in situations that I wasn't anxious about. My body was anxious. And then from there, it got worse in that I started to get insomnia. First time in my life, well, since I was about 13, that I couldn't sleep. And the self-hypnosis that I did when I was 13 to kick it to the curb wasn't working. Right. So those were the things. And then I just say I was blessed. I had a real estate friend who, how good real estate agents are at following up, right? That's just their thing.
Very good.
She called me, we had a call scheduled, and I looked on her profile and I said, oh, she just had surgery. So when I talked to her, she said, it was about her thyroid. And she told me how much better she felt. And then she just listed a few of her symptoms. And this is exactly how it happened. I got the phone in this hand. This hand goes to my throat and feels this thing that had been there.
It's a lump. Yep.
It was, I was like, oh my God. And I literally, that's when I went. But by then, here's the craziest thing. I had already burned it out. What I was feeling was a water-filled cyst. It was half that thyroid was already dead. So I had somehow killed my adrenals. My thyroid took over. I was, falling apart, hair falling out, no muscle, all of this stuff. And then it turns out that was all along. So that's how I knew. Now, I should say the World Health Organization I'm working to actually gather data on burnout. Now, World Health Organization will classify burnout as an occupational phenomenon, and they do not go on the clinical medical side of it. Okay, just saying that. However, you and I both know that this psycho-emotional body of ours, it responds to this crazy stress we're under. So,
and we're going to go into that in the second part of this. I have some questions for you around that. So it's good. Yeah. And I will say, just for you guys listening, and just so Melanie knows, I would say majority of this audience is open to alternative medicine or alternative therapies.
Yeah.
I've been out of Western medicine for, I think you guys know this now, God's at 5.5 years. That is so crazy. 5.5 years. I just had to, what's it called? My Pepperdine, my PhD. This is so random. It's a tangent, but I'm just sharing this with you guys. But anyway,
awesome.
I've never had to do anything, but well, this is kind of personal, but I guess we're going to go there, guys. Okay. So after when I'm like intimate with someone or my partner, let's say whatever, sometimes I get UTIs, urinary tract infections. It's very random. It's like, if you don't go pee, you guys after anyway. So I had there's like no really holistic way I have learned to get rid of it. I've looked at different ones, but it's never worked for me. So I'm out of them. So I just had to make so I had to make and most countries, you guys, you don't have to go to the doctor to have a prescription. America is like one of the few countries, like you could just normally go into a drugstore and get it. You cannot in America. I do not know why, because it's not an addictive drug. So it makes zero sense to me, but Pepperdine, I have a free thing. So I just had to go and make an appointment so I could get like a new one of like 20 or 30 of them. Cause that's what I did back in 20. I think the old prescription bottle that was like 2011. Like it was absolutely ridiculous, but it still worked all the way to 2022. So
I am with you. Listen, I swear I hadn't taken any Western medicine from when I had Lyme's disease in 1999. That was the last time I took drugs until this. And the drugs that I took weren't for the thyroid. They gave me something to use once, but it wasn't actually for thyroid. It was for my heart, and it made me sick. So I didn't take it. But that was like literally the first time that I had drugs since 1999. So I'm not a Western medicine human.
I'm more of a natural supplement person. But anyway, so I just wanted to share that for everyone listening, but you guys learned something really personal about me. And that's like also for Melanie, so you know.
But actually, but I'm sure we're saying, because maybe women don't know how dangerous UTIs are, and there's really only one way to get rid of it. So
there is. Yeah. So
there you go.
And so anyway, so what I wanted to share about, or what I wanted to go into with this is, when you realized that your health was going to hinder you in your career, like what were your initial, like, did you have feelings or thoughts, or were you kind of just like, whatever? Like, I know for me, like when I was working and I realized like a corporate job, and I realized I was getting tired at like 11 a.m. or 3 p.m. at night. Like I physically needed a nap. It didn't matter. Like coffee, this, like physically I needed it. And that's when I was like, I need something that's a lifestyle, because this is just not working. And so I was wondering for you, like what that felt like, or what kind of happened, or the transition into hypnotherapy.
Well, there was a lot. I was scared to death, first of all, because the condition that I was dealing with also had neurological effects. I literally was losing my mind. Okay. So I was like, how the heck am I I don't know if I can. I started this to help stay with my kids. Right. And I didn't know if I could feed them or myself at that point. That's the truth. In the way that I was doing business. So what I did was I knew it was temporary. I didn't know where I was going next, Colleen, but I knew it was temporary. And I essentially developed a business model where I became the LinkedIn leads lady. Okay. And I was working on the hours that I could work. I could only really, as you are saying, I had a window of time where I was all right. After 3:00, boom, my entire metabolism had already used up every ounce of energy, ATP trying to run through my body. It was gone. And so I switched my model. I was working with people just on Zoom in the mornings, doing this LinkedIn profile stuff and marketing consultant. And I do remember one day showing up with a client who I just loved her to pieces. And when the Zoom came up, she literally said, whoa. And I looked at myself, and I was sick. I was so sick. So it was really a scary time. It was definitely not and I went looking. I had to, because I had to not only get my health back, but I'm an entrepreneur and I have a fire in my belly to do big things, whatever that looks like. It's just something, it's kind of who we are. And I was like, I've got to get my life back. And I knew it was psycho-emotional. Okay. So I knew that it was because of the stress, because I'm a holistic health nut.
Yeah.
I have been since I was a teenager. And it wasn't, so people always want to say, oh, your thyroid went bad. You need to not eat this and this and that. And I'm like, please don't try to give me advice. It actually, talk about feeling like a fraud. That's another thing. Oh, that one came up
Yeah.
like, please don't try to tell me what I should or should not be eating or what kind of adaptogens are going to help me. Cause you're wrong, by the way. You have to be very careful when it comes to hyperthyroid versus hypothyroid.
Yep.
It wasn't because of what I was doing to my health. It was what was going on in here. And so I was studying Joe Dispenza.
What's going on in there?
The stress that was between my ears. It was literally a lifetime stuff that I never had addressed, from the stress, literally the thoughts from my head from my youth, then from the overworking piece that just kept spinning around, even though I broke through the glass ceiling of my family, like completely. And there was a lot of negative self-talk. And that is the largest source of stress that exists, by the way. That's the 24/7 stress machine. People think of stress as outside stress, but the inner critic was raging in my own head. Okay. So when I was doing so much meditating. So here I am with Dr. Joe, listening to Bruce Lipton, and Bruce basically says, to address these things truly, you've got to go to the level of the subconscious and not by yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's a gatekeeper. Now, he didn't use the word gatekeeper. That's what now I understand it as a hypnotherapist. I was like, all right, well, whatever the heck it takes, because I'm done. I can't fix this, apparently. And so that's why I sought hypnotherapy, because I knew that there was something that had to be addressed that was far deeper than all of the things that I was doing holistically to get my life back, my health back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that you shared that, because I agree. And I feel like there's the core of kind of three things of what that negative self-talk comes back toward, the stress. And mine personally was like enough, never feeling like enough, or like trying to prove the enoughness.
Yep.
The other one I feel like is love. And I forget the other one. I think it's just like fear, like you're fearful of everything, or like everything, like if you're going to do something, you're going to ruin it, whatever that is. Like those three, like kind of, it all comes back to one of those three. And so it was interesting. I did my first meeting with a hypnotherapist. I don't know, maybe it was like two months ago now. It was really interesting. It was a 4-hour meeting, and it was like really long, but
that is long.
The biggest thing, yeah, it was so deep. It was like, oh my God. So, but what I liked, the biggest thing that I took away from it and what he said, which I thought was so profound, is I would use language, or I like to use language where I would, even though I'm not a victim, I would kind of play victim-y language. So I would be like, well, this happened, instead of saying like, I was attracted to that, or I entertained that, or I, whatever. And so it was really interesting.
A radical responsibility.
Yeah, it was interesting how much, even though I feel like I've taken so much responsibility for my life, for my business, but it was like my interpersonal relationships, I felt like there was still this part where I wasn't able, like I was leaking my power still. It was like a leakage of power, or more, that's like the biggest thing, was it? Because it was like, I wasn't looking at these big dramatic things, like the big events in my life that happens, like abortion, or like codependency on my end, or whatever that it was, or financial $15,000 financial decisions, like with someone else or something like this. And I still wasn't in those ones taking where I liked it, or where I wanted to be the provider. I wanted to do whatever, like I was just leaking it in a different way. And when I saw this, it changed everything in my mind, because I was like, oh my God. And so now even it's funny, like I'll talk like, nope, let me take responsibility. Like I like I can like see it quicker, which is why I personally liked hypnotherapy when I did it, and I think that the biggest thing you talk about, I haven't heard the word gatekeeper, but someone, Gabby Bernstein, she's been on the podcast, and she does internal family systems, and she would call maybe the gatekeeper, like our protectors. So these things that we do that from ourselves to protect ourselves from feeling wounds, or from feeling pain, or from feeling like we did something, because we want to see ourselves as this perfect being and not other people. So I like that you brought that, because you can't do it alone.
You can't do it alone. And a hypnotherapist, one of the magic things that we get to do is listen for language patterns and see what the thoughts are, because you don't even necessarily see your thoughts. You can't. And the gatekeeper essentially was created when you were very small to help you to be resilient. Listen, your gatekeeper will keep you doing things that aren't healthy, relationship wise or whatever, doesn't matter, because it kept you alive when you were small. Okay. So it essentially helps you to survive. It doesn't care if your life is great. It just cares that you're alive. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So if
totally.
you had to be resilient as a child and your gatekeeper's extra strong at keeping you the way, things keeping the same. But I feel like at this point, I don't want to be resilient anymore. I mean, I really just prefer a really easy life is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I do feel like the work that I've been doing, actually, it helps to really, I'm not even sure, honestly, if bad things don't happen to me or if I just they don't even affect me the way that they would have. But I swear I have less interactions with, the types of people and circumstances that used to make life hard. I don't want to be resilient anymore. I want life to be easy. I asked for that. And I feel like I get it.
I agree. There's something
Yeah.
that I know there's something that I heard, actually, Amanda Francis said this, and it was, I don't know if it was in one of her YouTubes or a paid course, but she said something like, why do things have to be hard for me to learn? Like, why can't it just be good and I still learn? Like, why
Yes.
I don't need the bad story anymore for something to be good. And I was like, oh my God, I love that. And
Yeah.
I agree with what you said. And this has been a big shift for me recently. So it's so funny we're having this, like, where I'm like, oh, I've finished everything. I have nothing to do. Like, I'm just going to relax, or I'm just going to read a book, or I'm like, yeah, literally. And it's been interesting. Whether you want to call it relaxation, restoration, but that addictive cycle to always work hard and
work, do.
And a lot of people I know in this community, that's where they're at, is let me work, let me do. I don't want to look at the pain of the relationships I've been through. I don't even want to in a relationship. I don't want to put myself out there. So if I just work and consume all my time in my house or doing this.
Yes.
And
oh my God. Perfect point. I actually want to put that out. I'll put that out here. Says we're being vulnerable. This is about love, right? This is that's your work is very much
about love.
So essentially one of the other reasons why I continued to overwork was because I was literally in a horrible marriage, and I am the journaler of journal, the personal development, spiritual, get into it. Like, and I knew that this was the area of my life that was just a black hole, and there's nothing for me to do there. And so I kept working because there was some sort of semblance of satisfaction, predictability, something good that would come out of that. Like literally I could watch the numbers go up. I was really good at it. Right. But part of my healing was also becoming a direct and opposite vibrational match for that human, so that he would bounce out of my life for the rest of my life. Yeah. So, yeah. And that was a decision that I made. I made a decision that instead of living that life as it would have continued, that I actually in this lifetime I committed to embracing full love, romantic love, to having that experience for myself. And and that's the most self-loving thing I ever did. Let's just go, Noah, this is for me. Love is for me.
Yeah.
And so that was part of my healing journey. Absolutely. And coming out the other side of that, I also have way too many darn tools to use to help women who have dealt with stuff like that. Either that they feel like, if they feel like they need to get out of there, and they do, because it's the most self-loving thing you can do. Or recognizing that you might be avoiding love because of past,
that's a big one. My clients, well, they're probably both. I think my clients, two things. My clients you guys either come to me right after you're about to go through a divorce, or like you've gone through one or going through one, and you don't know that's interpersonal relationship side, which is like coming back to love and communication and relationships. And that carries over in business or in interpersonal because they're connected. But I want to go a little bit deeper into also like, so with hypnotherapy, right? I never really, I mean, obviously I knew it existed, but what inspired me as I was watching the Real Housewives of Dubai, and I love Sarah Almighty, Dr. Sarah, she's like amazing. I love her. So she was talking about hypnotherapy. I was like, that's it. I'm going to do it. And that's basically what inspired me to finally take the action. But I'd love for you, I know you said a little bit, but just give a little bit of a deeper understanding? I know that you said like subconscious, but if someone's listening, like,
And
but
then
let's say between therapy, coach, hypnotherapy, like you don't have to go into all, but if just for that definition for them.
sure. So what I like to say is I'm not a talk therapist. However, when you're talking to me, I'm listening for the language that is causing the self-sabotage. Okay.
Mhm.
So hypnotherapy is very much about empowering at the level of thought. Well, first, let's just make it easy. First thing to do is to remove the weeds before you plant the garden, right? So first is to actually get at the level of subconscious thought. There's really no way to do this consciously. And I know your listeners will, uh, you know, be familiar with the feeling of using affirmations and then just feeling like lies and then making you feel worse, right? Right. That's because there's an underlying belief about yourself, your place in the world as it relates to money or love or health or whatever it is, that is completely, it's a conflict. It's called a values conflict. So the only way to get those is at the subconscious level. So to actually pull out the weeds, you got to get down into the subconscious. And all that really means is using some tools that hypnotherapists have to have you drop down into about a theta, that's brainwave state just before sleep, and do some pretty, significant tweaks in there at the level to get rid of the negative underlying beliefs, and then plant those flowers, that garden, that beautiful life, the empowering beliefs about yourself and place in the world. You and I both know the only thing that's keeping you from the vision is something that's between your ears. Because if somebody else has it, if you know anybody on the planet at all who is happy, healthy, wealthy, has incredible love and sex life, is funny, can dance, I mean, what else do people do? Cook. Okay. Is there anybody who has all of those characteristics? They do exist. They're not, they may be anomalies. All that means is that they either got rid of their weeds or they didn't have so many planted in the first place, which we could call that luck. I don't know. But I feel like if I wasn't so unlucky, I wouldn't also have the tools to help other people at this point, because I wouldn't deeply understand how to get the weeds out. So okay. So at the level of the subconscious, that's really the most important thing, because we do, typically, if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to spend maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars and hours on your conscious development, personal and professional. You're going to do all the things and you're going to come back from that event all pumped up. And then the saboteur is going to creep on in, and you're going to find yourself another year and a half later in the same world because nothing changed at the level of thought.
Yeah.
At the subconscious. So that's why a hypnotherapist is get in deep with somebody that actually understands your journey, like who it is that you are and what you're wanting to do. This is why I call myself the entrepreneur's hypnotherapist, because I've seen these patterns over, tens of thousands of people all over the world. These patterns repeat. And before I was a hypnotherapist, I actually saw them, but I had no permission to say, hey, I think you need some deep work. Like you just,
And what do you,
as their coach or consultant, I couldn't say, okay, you know everything you need to know, and you're sabotaging yourself hardcore right now. You need to go talk to, I didn't even know who they should talk to. Now I could say, a hypnotherapist is going to do wonders. You're going to have, the freedom. It's like taking your foot off the brake in your life. It's amazing.
Yeah. What do you think out of all the patterns that you've seen? What are the most reoccurring subconscious thought patterns?
Sure. So these are things like it takes hard work to earn money. And so therefore people may stop themselves from actually being successful because they don't want to lose their relationships, their health, right? So these are also the either ors. You can either be a successful woman or you can have love. You can either be successful or have your health. So these are the either ors. Those are the most prevalent. And those are the ones that, even though consciously there's a desire for whatever the impact is they want to make in the world. Part of them is saying, yeah, but if you do that, you're going to lose your family. And there's no way in the world they could ever do that. And it's not true, by the way, but it's subconscious, it feels true, right? The other ones are things like rich people are jerks. or people like us don't get that successful. There's a lot of deep like sales trauma in there.
Okay.
Over and over again. So they're trying to do sales and yet they have sales trauma. So those are the most prevalent. And for women, totally the relationship between their self-worth and their desirability as a woman, and how all of that gets all weirdly mixed up with success and money and how you're going to get it. Yeah, there's a lot, there's layers and layers in there. Unfortunately.
That's so wild. It's so wild. And I could see each of those probably in a good depth of my client base. I could see each of that. So yeah. Well, this is so fascinating. I'm so happy I had you on and we talked about this. I know the audience will love it because we've never had someone on hypnotherapy. We've never really talked about, burnout and these things. So I know that it added so much value, and I'd love for you to share just, any last thoughts you had, and then obviously any way that people can reach out or connect with you.
So burnout, it shows up long before physical in feeling that you now have kind of a negative feelings around your business. So you started with a fire in your belly, you're all excited, enthusiastic. And then there gets this feeling of resentment, shame, guilt, fear, comparisonitis, imposter syndrome, all that stuff creeps in. And there's an overall kind of cynical feeling. That's what burnout is defined as by the World Health Organization. Okay. So all of that, I promise you want to get into addressing burnout long before you get to the point where you lose half your thyroid or you have a heart attack. The leading cause of death in women is heart attack. And so my work, one of the first things we do is address the heart. We address the body, your body. We get rid of the crap that's going on in the brain, which is your 24-hour source of stress. And then it's actually a 5-step proprietary process that I take people through. And so what I would ask you to do is take this seriously before you get to burnout, because there's really no reason for you to have to come back and rise from the ashes, right? Like this world and the opportunities we have is so different from even a generation ago. And you can have success without ever giving up anything, sacrificing anything you love. And so that's essentially what I would put there. Please don't take this and go, okay, if I ever get burned out, I got to think about that. No, like take these steps now. Make your life a beautiful story rather than a tragic and had to come back from the ashes story.
Yeah. I love that. And I agree with it. It's not that you give up things, it's that you begin to do more of the things you love.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Oh gosh. And I have so many things, but I wanted to say, because it is super important, because you talked about that time for relaxation. And this is a crucial point for adults to know. Our brains thrive with play and daydreaming. Those are the things you were told not to do as a kid. Mm-hmm. It was the most awful advice you ever got. Play and daydream.
Yeah.
And thrive. All right.
So, no, I love that. And then where can people find you?
Well, they can find me on Facebook in my group, Accelerate Entrepreneur Growth Without Burnout. I'm Melanie McCool, the Entrepreneur's Hypnotherapist. I'm on YouTube and LinkedIn, very much so. My blog is being revamped, but it's melanie-mccool.com. And and all
perfect. We'll make sure we put those in the show notes so everyone has the link, so they have them, so you guys can just click to join her group. And I love you guys. I really hope you enjoyed this one. I feel like I learned so much, and it was like a confirmation for me of my growth where I'm going right now. And so I love you guys. Make sure to leave a review, and we'll talk with you next week.
Thank you.